Welcome in, everyone. Pull up a chair, get comfortable, and let's get right into it.
Yeah, let's do it. It's great to be here.
It is so great to have you here with us today because we are going on a bit of a journey. And when I say you, I mean you, the person listening right now.
Right. You are the essential third person in this conversation.
Exactly. We've got a really fantastic deep dive lined up for you today. We are going to be exploring a single, incredibly rich source, which is a comprehensive Wikipedia article all about the iconic 1946 rhythm and blues song, Route 66, or, to use its full official title, Get Your Kicks on Route 66.
It is a title that practically invites you to, roll the windows down and just hit the gas pedal.
It really does. Our mission today is to figure out how a simple cross-country road trip birthed a musical standard. We want to understand how a song hasn't just survived the decades, but is actively shapeshifted across entirely different genres and generations of artists. Okay, let's unpack this.
To really understand the DNA of the song, we have to ground ourselves in the historical context of the original source material. So we're looking at the year 1946.
Post-war America.
Exactly. A post-war America that is absolutely ripe for travel, for mobility, and for new beginnings. People are looking out at the horizon with a fresh perspective after years of global conflict.
The rationing is ending.
Right. Automobile production is ramping back up, and the highway system is calling. So, as we go through this deep dive, keep in mind that this isn't just a story about a catchy tune. It is about the cultural evolution of the American road trip itself, captured in just a few minutes of music.
That perfectly sets the stage for the origin story. I was thinking about this while reading the article. Today, before we go on a long drive, we spend hours curating the perfect Spotify playlist.
Oh, absolutely.
But the songwriter we are talking about today, Bobby Troup, he essentially created the ultimate road trip anthem by writing it while driving.
That's the best part.
So the year is 1946, and Troup has this dream. He wants to try his hand at being a Hollywood songwriter. So he and his wife, Cynthia, pack up everything they need into their 1941 Buick, and they leave Pennsylvania behind, pointing the car west toward California.
It's a classic American migration story, but the route they took is actually where the creative spark happened.
Right. And here is the pivot that I found so surprising. The trip actually began on U.S. Highway 40.
Yeah.
And as they were driving along U.S. 40, which eventually connected them to U.S. 66 to get to the coast, Troup had an idea. He initially wanted to write a tune about U.S. 40.
Which is wild to think about.
How different would music history be if he had stuck with that?
Musically speaking, it probably wouldn't have worked. Route 40 just doesn't have the same rhythmic bounce to it. The double six creates a natural percussive rhyme scheme that you just can't get out of the word 40.
And this brings us to the unsung hero of this entire deep dive, his wife, Cynthia. It wasn't Bobby Troup who came up with the legendary hook that we all know today.
No, it wasn't.
It was Cynthia who leaned over in that 1941 Buick, probably exhausted from the drive, and suggested the title, Get Your Kicks on Route 66.
What's fascinating here is how the actual mechanics of the songwriting process played out against the reality of the trip.
Right.
You have this 10-day drive across the western two-thirds of the country, from Chicago to Los Angeles. The song was started during that 10-day journey out there on the open road.
With the wind in their hair.
Exactly. But according to the source material, it wasn't actually finished in the car. Troup finished the song after they had already arrived in Los Angeles. And to get all those iconic cities and towns in the right order for the lyrics, Chicago, St. Louis, Joplin, Oklahoma City, he had to consult a physical paper map.
That is the ultimate irony to me. We think of this song as the definitive boots-on-the-ground road trip anthem. But he was literally sitting at a desk in a Los Angeles apartment, tracing his finger over a map to remember where he had just been.
A little bit of movie magic right there.
Yeah, and because he was relying on this map to finish the lyrics, there were some casualties. I was laughing so hard reading the article because it includes this later quote from Cynthia.
Oh, about the missing city.
Yes. Even years later, she commented, and I'm quoting here, "What I can't really believe is that he doesn't have Albuquerque in the song. He drove right through it, looked at a map, and somehow still left Albuquerque completely out of the lyrics."
It just goes to show that even a song that feels like a spontaneous, lived-in travelogue is still subject to the editing process, and occasionally simple human error. He just skipped right over New Mexico's largest city.
Whoops.
But regardless of missing Albuquerque, the foundation was laid, and that brings us to the very first time this song was put on wax. We are talking about the Nat King Cole original version.
I want to know how that happened so quickly. He recorded it with the King Cole Trio on March 16, 1946, at Radio Recorders in Los Angeles.
The timeline there is incredible if you really look at it. Troup makes the drive in early 1946, the song is written, and by mid-March of that exact same year, Nat King Cole is already in the studio recording it.
That's a fast turnaround.
Cole was a massive star, and his trio's piano-driven rhythm and blues style was the perfect vehicle for Troup's lyrics.
Capitol Records released it as a single shortly after, on April 20, 1946. Just a quick piece of trivia for you listening. The B-side to that single was a song called Everyone is Saying Hello Again. Why Must We Say Goodbye?
Quite the mouthful compared to the A-side.
Right, but the A-side is what took off. The article mentions it reached number 3 on Billboard magazine's Race Records chart, and it climbed to number 11 on the broader singles chart. Can you give us a little context on what those charts meant at the time?
Absolutely. The Race Records chart was the industry term Billboard used in the 1940s to track rhythm and blues music, which was predominantly created by and marketed to Black Americans during a heavily segregated era in the music industry.
Okay, got it.
The fact that Route 66 hit number 3 there was huge, but the fact that it crossed over and reached number 11 on the broader mainstream singles chart meant it was breaking through those racial barriers and appealing to a massive nationwide audience.
That crossover appeal is so crucial to its legacy.
It really is. And its impact wasn't just a flash in the pan for Cole either. If you look at his discography, you can see how much he genuinely loved the song. He didn't just record it once and move on.
You went back to it, right?
Yeah, he actually re-recorded the tune for later albums as recording technology improved. You can find lush subsequent versions of it on his 1956 album, After Midnight, and again on the 1961 release, The Nat King Cole Story. By returning to it repeatedly, he really cemented Route 66 as an absolute standard of the rhythm and blues genre.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because it didn't just stay a rhythm and blues standard. As a listener, you might be familiar with 5 or 6 different versions of this song, and they probably sound nothing alike.
Very true.
How does a smooth R&B tune become a global chameleon?
It comes down to the underlying musical architecture. At its core, Route 66 is built on a standard 12-bar blues progression.
Okay.
It is an incredibly sturdy, simple, and adaptable framework. Because the structure is so fundamental, you can dress it up in almost any musical style, and it still holds together.
Let's test that theory with some of the covers mentioned in the source. Just to start with the contemporaries, you had Bing Crosby teaming up with the Andrews Sisters.
A classic pairing.
They recorded a version that reached number 14 on the Billboard chart in that same year, 1946. How does a song go from a smooth piano trio to a mainstream crooner and a vocal harmony group in a matter of months?
Because that walking bass line and the rhythmic naming of the cities acts almost like a drum beat. Crosby and the Andrews Sisters leaned into the swing and the novelty of the geography. It felt fun and patriotic in a post-war landscape.
Okay, so that's 1946. Let's fast forward to 1964. Suddenly, the Rolling Stones are putting it on their self-titled debut album.
A huge shift.
We are talking about gritty, rebellious British rock and roll. How did a group of young kids in London learn a song about an American highway?
The lineage of how the Rolling Stones actually arrived at their version is a tangled web all on its own. The music critic, Richie Unterberger, has some great notes on this, which are cited in the Wikipedia article. He points out it was a staple of their early live tours.
Did they just listen to Nat King Cole and speed it up?
Not at all. According to those notes, the Stones pieced it together from 2 entirely different sources. They learned the aggressive, driving musical arrangement from a version that rock and roll pioneer Chuck Berry recorded for his 1961 album, New Jukebox Hits.
Oh, that makes sense.
Berry had taken that 12-bar blues structure and electrified it. However, for the actual words, the Stones sourced the lyrics from a version by Perry Como, specifically from Como's 1959 album, Como Swings.
That is wild. They took Chuck Berry's blazing rock and roll energy and layered it over lyrics they pulled from a Perry Como pop vocal record.
A total hybrid.
That is the kind of musical archaeology that makes a deep dive like this so much fun. It's like a game of intercontinental telephone. And the genre hopping did not stop with 1960s British rock.
Not by a long shot. Where did it go next?
Well, the article highlights its jump into jazz. In 1982, the vocal group, the Manhattan Transfer, released a version that was featured on the soundtrack for the 1981 film Sharky's Machine.
Oh yeah, Burt Reynolds.
Yep. And more impressively, that version earned them a Grammy Award for Best Jazz Vocal Performance.
Which makes sense. They took the song back to its jazz and R&B roots, but added complex, modern vocal harmonies. It's a completely different flavor from the Rolling Stones, yet highly acclaimed in its own right.
But if we're talking about different flavors, we have to talk about the hard left turn into synth pop. The English electronic band Depeche Mode took a swing at it.
I love this one.
In 1988, their version reached number 61 on the Billboard Hot 100. I have to admit, picturing a 1940s road trip song played on dark industrial synthesizers is breaking my brain a little bit.
It sounds like a mismatch, but they did something incredibly clever. Depeche Mode didn't just cover it straight, they mashed it up in a medley with their own song, Behind the Wheel.
Oh, that is smart.
Right. By conceptually connecting the thematic idea of driving from their own brooding track with the ultimate American road trip anthem, they created something entirely new. They proved that the desire for the open road translates just as well to dark European dance clubs as it does to a dusty highway in Arizona.
And just to prove that the 12-bar blues framework can literally do anything, it also conquered country.
Naturally.
The artist Michael Martin Murphey recorded the song for his 1989 album, Land of Enchantment. And when it was released as a single in 1990, it charted on the Billboard Hot Country Singles chart.
Jazz, rock, electronic pop, country, the framework of the song, the rhythm of traveling, the naming of places is universally appealing. It's a blank canvas.
Speaking of a blank canvas, that brings us to my absolute favorite anomaly in the entire article. We have to talk about the British Detour. We have to talk about Billy Bragg.
Yes, the Bragg version.
Yeah. For those who aren't familiar, Bragg is this fiercely political, working-class, English, punk, and folk musician. And in 1977, he was playing with his band Riff Raff. They were performing Route 66 as part of their set. But Bragg had a problem with the lyrics.
He didn't relate to them.
Exactly. He strongly objected to standing on a stage and singing about these American cities that he had never actually been to.
It felt inauthentic to him. He was a kid from England. Singing about Gallup, New Mexico, and Flagstaff, Arizona meant absolutely nothing to his lived experience or to his audience.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. Isn't it kind of sacrilege to just cross out the lyrics to an established classic and write in your own hometowns? You wouldn't rewrite the lyrics to a Beatles song just because you've never been to Penny Lane.
I get why you'd say that, but think about the folk music tradition. Folk music is entirely based on oral history, on taking traditional melodies and updating the lyrics to reflect current events or local geography.
Fair.
Bragg was just applying that folk tradition to an R&B standard. He took ownership of the concept and completely localized it. He kept the original music, but swapped out all those iconic U.S. cities for English towns. He titled it A13, Trunk Road to the Sea.
So good.
He replaced the sprawling American West with the route of the A13 road in England. Instead of telling people to get their kicks on Route 66, he was inviting listeners to go motoring on the A13.
I love that so much. The article notes that growing up in Barking, driving down the A13 to Southend was the ultimate escape for him. He describes Southend as being a promised land in a very Springsteen-ish way.
That's a great description.
For anyone listening, think of that classic Bruce Springsteen blue-collar longing for an escape from your hometown. That's what the A13 was for Bragg.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it shows us something profound about how music operates. Bragg used Troup's melody to paint a picture of local geography and working-class identity. The American dream of the open road was translated into a British working-class reality of driving to the coast for the weekend.
It's the same feeling.
The desire for freedom is exactly the same, but the landmarks change to reflect the reality of the listener.
Unfortunately for Bragg, the music industry is a bit more rigid than the folk tradition. He wanted to include his version on his 1983 debut album, Life's a Riot with Spy vs. Spy.
But he hit a wall.
A major copyright hurdle.
Yes.
He simply couldn't get the official permission to use the music of Route 66 with his altered lyrics at the time. Copyright law doesn't always appreciate folk-style localization.
The legalities of songwriting credits often get in the way of creative reinterpretation. The publishers protect the original work fiercely.
Because of those legal problems, the song sat in the vault for decades. It wasn't officially released until the year 2003, when it was finally included on a compilation album.
It's a great example of how an idea can endure, even when it has to wait 20 years to officially see the light of day. But speaking of endurance, we also have to look at how this song managed to stay culturally relevant well into the 21st century.
That is a perfect transition, because we are moving from the A13 highway straight into a modern animated revival. For a massive portion of a younger generation, their introduction to this 1946 standard didn't come from Nat King Cole And it didn't come from the Rolling Stones.
Nope.
It came from a movie theater in 2006.
We are talking about the Disney and Pixar animated film Cars.
Exactly. The film is literally a love letter to the lore of Route 66 and the forgotten towns along the highway. So, of course, the soundtrack had to include the song. But what's great is that they didn't just use one version.
They feature two.
The soundtrack brought in Chuck Berry, whose 1961 version was so influential to the rock lineage we talked about. And they also brought in modern artist John Mayer to record a fresh, bluesy take specifically for the film.
Which bridged the gap beautifully. You have the historical anchor of Chuck Berry reminding older listeners of the song's pedigree, and the contemporary appeal of John Mayer, ensuring the song resonates with the parents and children watching the film.
And it wasn't just a throwaway soundtrack cover either. John Mayer's version was critically acclaimed. It actually secured a Grammy nomination for Best Solo Rock Vocal Performance.
It proves that a well-crafted song doesn't really have an expiration date. It just needs the right vehicle to reach a new audience.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We've driven from a 1941 Buick out of Pennsylvania through the recording studios of 1940s Los Angeles, across the Atlantic to British rock bands and the A13 highway, into a synth-pop dance club, and right into a Pixar animation studio. So what does this all mean?
That is the big question for you, the listener. We want you to think about why a song like this actually matters.
Right, because Route 66 isn't just a catchy tune to tap your foot to. It is a masterclass in how a simple, relatable concept, the freedom of a road trip, can be endlessly adapted.
Exactly. Whether you are driving that 1941 Buick across the American West, or dancing in a dark club in the 80s to Depeche Mode,
or motoring down the A13 to South End hoping for a spring-skeenish escape. The core human desire for exploration remains exactly the same. The song is just the vessel that carries that feeling.
This raises an important question, though. A final thought to leave you with as we wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, lay it on us.
Throughout this conversation, we've talked about Route 66 as if it's a permanent fixture of the landscape. But Bobby Troup managed to write a definitive, immortal anthem about American geography, largely by just looking at a paper map in a Los Angeles apartment.
Yeah, that is still so crazy to me.
It makes you wonder, how much of the legendary, romanticized folklore we consume about places and travel is based on raw, lived experience, and how much is just a cleverly rhymed illusion created by someone sitting in a room with a map?
What an incredible thought to chew on the next time you hit the highway. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we will catch you next time.